Welcome back to Energetically You, where we talk about all things optimal wellness, abundant mindset, and wellpreneurship. I'm your host, Megan Swan, a wellness coach and consultant, and the founder of the Sustainable Integrated Wellness Approach. I help high-performance women thread more wellness into their lifestyle so that it becomes a way of life and not a check mark on their to-do list. I love to design custom, approachable wellness lifestyles because, let's face it, there is no one-size-fits-all wellness. Today, I am so excited to get to know and dive right in with Amanda Bodine. She is a friend and former client. She is also a former educator turned low-tox living consultant. Amanda teaches women, predominantly new and soon-to-be moms, how to avoid the hormone disrupting chemicals found in the products they use every day, so that they can have healthier bodies, healthier children, and safer homes. She is really like a wizard when it comes to all things low tox. So I am so excited for this conversation. Let's get to it. Amanda, welcome. I'm so excited for our conversation. I feel like we're going to get to explore a whole lot of things we've never actually talked up to one another about one-on-one. And I know that you're just a wealth of information. So first, how are you? How was your weekend? Let's start there.
I'm well. It was a good weekend. The weather's just been gorgeous here for us. So it was actually just a joy to be able to go outside a little bit, spend time with my little daughter. Yeah, so it's really nice, relaxing actually.
Nice. Well, take us back a little bit and paint the picture of how and when you started paying more attention to these things personally, and kind of what was the catalyst for you to become a little bit more informed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wasn't someone who paid a ton of attention to things like toxins and pollution. I was a smoker for many years. I drank lots on the weekends, that sort of thing. But I got pregnant with my daughter, and I was 36 at the time. And it really became apparent to me that I needed to pay more attention, that pollution and toxins and things like that wasn't necessarily the out there issue that I had always made it out to be, that it was very much an at-home issue. And so, yeah, being pregnant at 36, and then sort of being a little bit terrified that I probably hadn't been doing the things that I should have been doing. My body probably wasn't necessarily as ready as it needed to be for this 9-month journey. I became increasingly concerned that I needed to pay more attention to the toxins that I was exposed to, especially in the home. I was obsessed with the idea of giving birth to this little girl and bringing her home to like this very non-toxic like environment. And I quickly realized that was a lot harder than just sort of wishing it to be. But I did my best while I was pregnant. And it really wasn't until after giving birth to my daughter that I started to really dive into all the ways that we are exposed to toxins and pollution, and like all of the really insidious small ways that we don't necessarily consider, even those of us who are paying more attention than I necessarily was. Those ways that have big impacts. And yeah, so it wasn't until after giving birth to her and having more time to myself, because of course I ended up staying home. I didn't go back to my teaching position. The world was, in turmoil at the time anyway. And so I had some time on my hands, and I really started to dive in and do the research.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so many follow-up questions. One, how do you sort of help your clients manage this, like doing it all from a place of fear? Because I can totally relate. Like I was very much in the same boat for my first pregnancy. And I'll be quite honest, like by the second pregnancy came around and my obsession had definitely dwindled a little. Yeah. Like I still did bio baby as much as possible. I did, cloth diapers. I did a lot, but at some point there, as mothers, there needs to be this weighing of like practicality and like, impacting our own well-being and stress. And then, the benefits of being low tox.
Yeah, absolutely. What I really love, especially about like the one-on-one work that I can do, is that it comes from a place of what are your unique circumstances and what are your priorities, and even as like what is the budget for making some of these changes. So I really love that aspect of the work that I do with clients, is that it is very much geared towards what will work for you, because there are lots of different places, jumping off points where we can start. And there are, I could give a list of, the 5 things you have to avoid, but if it doesn't necessarily work for a mom's lifestyle or a woman's lifestyle, then it's not going to be effective and it is going to feel very overwhelming. And so I love to just be able to spend some time with my clients, getting to know them and getting to know like what their goals are, what their priorities are, and then working from there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very similar to my approach with wellness. It's like pulling on the really key threads and then also giving ourselves permission to, not do it all at the same time and, be okay with that. Absolutely. So I really wanted to focus today on sort of where we kind of overlap more so, which is the toxicity that is in the food system. Yeah. And, how important it is to read labels and what are we reading them for? And, end on a high note with some, like some good news that, increasingly there are really easy to find good choices out there. So let's start with, your knowledge of the food system and, maybe not the whole history of it by any means, but, how many decades ago did we start getting so toxic and why aren't we doing anything about it, kind of thing?
Yeah. So, especially when feeding, large populations of people and these companies really only being concerned with their bottom line is the reason why our food system is as polluted as it is, and why pretty much everything that you buy on the shelf, especially if it's geared towards children, is incredibly toxic. Cheap ingredients, derived from petrochemicals and, things that are really flashy and colorful and look good, but are also full of ingredients that are designed to get us addicted to them and want more of them, and, sit down and eat an entire bag of potato chips, that sort of idea that came about, especially when convenience became sort of the what was necessary, right? We needed, we needed something quick and fast, and companies were able to create it. And they were also able to make food that could sit on the shelves for months, years without spoiling. And, and really it boils down to, the bottom line. How much money can companies make off of selling us fake food and packaging it as, real, nutritious, good for you kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure or maybe you haven't read, is it Sugar, Fat, Salt, or some different combination of those 3 words? There's a great book that kind of gives you like a deep dive into understanding like how the food system even works. I'm forgetting the term right now. It's not the sweet spot, but there's like this industry term of the reality that like so many of these snack products, even when they're like quote unquote salty things like chips, have sugar in them because there's this like perfect do you know the term? It's like this perfect scientific combination that they figured out of the perfect combination of sugar, salt, and fat that just like we cannot say no to. And yeah, and then the reality that there are specific chemicals that just kind of turn your brain off, and you know, your cravings are taking over.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what are some things that for you, if you're giving like, let's do the top 5. I know that I've always said to clients, like colorings should be a really big one. What are your top 5?
Yeah, so I'm with you on the coloring. So food dyes, right? Red dye 40 and blue 1 and yellow 5 and 6, green, you know, all of them. They all are problematic in their own ways. Most of them are linked to cancer. Most of them are also linked to ADHD-like behaviors, also depression and anxiety and all those sorts of things. We have animal studies, but then we also have a ton of anecdotal evidence with children. Even kids who do have ADHD will display, you know, worse symptoms when exposed to these types of food dyes in their coloring in their foods. So definitely for me, it's no food dyes. I really, really try to completely avoid artificial flavors, but natural flavors aren't much better, and it gets to be problematic, especially when you are trying to, you know, avoid both of those, artificial and natural flavors, because there's a lot of food on the shelf that you can't get if you're completely avoiding both of those. Then when it comes to preservatives and additives, TBHQ, BHA and BHT, those types of ingredients, I definitely, if it's in there, I mean, it just doesn't even come home. And then, you know, anything, and, you know, as far as like the thickeners go, carrageenan, it's an easy one to avoid. So I like to mention that one because it isn't a lot of products, but there are equally products that don't have it. So especially when you're looking at like your coffee creamers and anything like that, carrageenan is a really
How do you spell that?
Carrageenan. So it's CARRAGEENAN. Carrageenan.
Okay. What is it?
It's a thickener. So it helps with texture.
Is it like soy lectin? No.
It's actually, so it is, it's seaweed. It's like a type of red seaweed. It's a plant-based ingredient, but the issue with it is that it's linked to cancer, but it's also linked to like inflammatory bowel disease, IBS. It's highly inflammatory. So it's, yeah.
Okay, so I'm re at 5, or was that 4? I lost track.
Yeah, you know, I'll add another one in there because honestly, enriched flours, like that doesn't come home either. Anything enriched or bleached flours, that's just at that point it's so processed, it's fake food. It's not even real food anymore. So I avoid I avoid that one as well.
Okay. Well, we definitely wanted to talk how you're a bit of a snack expert, as most mothers are. So there was once upon a time where I, you know, homemade a lot of things and, you know, I still do that sometimes, but it's just not realistic for the day to day. It could be like an weekend activity, but I think to the degree with lunches and all the things going back to school, and then even like if you're wanting or fortunate to go to the office, so you just want like something to snack on while you're working and not the whole meal, like what are some go-to, I don't know, how do you work? Should we talk brands? Should we talk
yeah, you know, so, and that the whole homemade aspect, especially when it comes to snacks, like I figured this out early on with Tula, just knowing that I couldn't really get her the snacks that were geared towards toddlers because everything's made with rice flour or rice syrup and arsenic, and all of those issues it's really daunting for me. And so it was a challenge to find, you know, what can I feed her? And it was kind of this whole idea, like, do I have to make things from scratch? And I don't want to. Like, I make lunch and dinner and breakfast. I don't want to make snacks from scratch. And I just wasn't willing to. So that is why, yeah, I really sort of started looking into ingredients when it came to snacks, like that convenient nutrition. Because yeah, I wasn't making anything, and I'm not a baker. I don't enjoy any of that. So, but as far as, brands and stuff, there are some, really surprising ones, brands, there are brands out there that are actually making foods that we're used to eating or we're used to seeing in the stores, but they don't have all of the extra added ingredients. Sometimes they're made with 10 or 5 or fewer ingredients, and they're really delicious. Some brands that come to mind, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect brand. I wouldn't recommend every single item in their product line, but Annie's is a great one for kids. Like, they make all sorts of, like, cookies, and they make the, instead of goldfish crackers, they make the gold bunny crackers. Yeah. The little bunnies. And again, like, not everything that they make, like, they do occasionally use some, enriched flours and things like that, which we'll just avoid. We tend to go for more of like the whole wheat stuff. And their USDA certified organic, line will invest in those. So we do like the Annie's brand. And Amy's is another brand, that, especially with like frozen for like really quick, convenient lunches. Amy's is one that we like. And crackers, like, surprisingly, crackers are really hard to make good versions of, because they are, like, you want that flaky cracker crust. A lot of it comes from those enriched flours that we just don't eat. And so Simple Mills and Hu is a brand, where it's like, surprisingly, the crackers are actually good, because it's not easy to make a low-tox, good for you cracker, apparently.
Yeah. Well, here where I am in Mexico, I kind of default to tostadas, but I'm like, that probably is not 1,000% healthy either, but at least it's corn and not wheat. And most of them are only a few ingredients, and you get that sort of crispy cracker-like feel. But yeah, to your point, it's hard. Yeah. What do you think about rice cakes?
So I'm not a fan. I've never been a fan of rice cakes. I remember being a little girl and my mom putting peanut butter on a rice cake, and I was like, what is, like, you can't possibly think I'm going to eat this. And I know they've gotten a little bit better, but I will tell you, like, rice, especially when it comes to kids, you want to source brands that are sourcing from like either organic or from areas of the country. California is a good example of, where you want to source your rice from, just because of the high levels of arsenic. And when it comes to little kids and little bodies, those heavy metal toxicity is a lot more important for them. So I'm careful with rice. We are really, I'm wary of how much rice we consume and rice products that we do consume. And it always has to be USDA certified organic, and extra points if they actually test for arsenic levels.
And so are there websites that are relatively user-friendly, or is it probably intentionally like this dark rabbit hole that's very difficult to get clear information on?
Yeah. I mean, if there are websites out there where you could find this sort of, information, or find like all of like the safer versions out there sourced in one place, I haven't found it. That's for certain. But yeah, I think it is an intentional rabbit hole, because it's not necessarily common knowledge. People don't necessarily know. I think, we've been conditioned to believe that if it's on the shelf, that it's perfectly fine. And if it's an ingredient included in the product, then obviously it's in there for a really good reason. Otherwise, why would a company bother to include it? And the truth is that it's really just in there to, to make the product as cheap as possible. Not for the consumer necessarily, but for the company.
Yeah. So I don't know how well versed you're on this, but I once upon a time saw some graphic, and I definitely have studied this to some degree. Like there's this sort of dark web of relationships between major, not only US, I would say global processed food brands and big pharma. Mm-hmm. And I know the other day you were talking, and I wanted to circle back to this because I think it's such an important point. And my husband's a surgeon, and he'll be the first to say, like, he doesn't remember like taking nutrition in school. Like maybe there was an hour or two, but like it was not a month, or there wasn't a textbook. Like it's not a major thing. And most doctors would also be, we're not talking about functional medicine doctors, but especially specialists, honestly, they're experts in sickness. Yeah. They're experts in like the end of the line. Like you've reached the point where you really need like do or die help. Yeah. And there's not a lot of conversation being had. And I know, like, I was just home in Canada, and there's different problems being in a public system, such as when you go to the doctor, most of them have, like, you can only come in with like one problem or like a maximum of 3 symptoms or something, and you can't talk about anything else. And just how ridiculous that is, right? Like, yeah. How is that holistic to the issue? And so I just wanted your thoughts, because I know you're recently looking into this, and you recently went to the doctor for the first time in a long time. Yeah. And let's talk about that. Like, as someone who's very conscious of not having a lot of toxic food in my home, and meaning we eat organic as much as possible. I always read labels. I mean, sometimes I, will buy not something I know has like something really bad in it, and I still let my kids eat it once in a while, but like 80% of the time I'm buying Annie's or whatever, or I'm not even buying those things. And it's just like, the snack is grapes. Like the snack is, there's carrots. That's all there is. But when the way that I raise my kids, they don't need to go to the doctor. Like we don't buy over the counter, like they don't take over the counter meds they don't get sick. Right. And it's just like sort of a different perspective, I guess. And I think what maybe some women and moms need to hear is like, you don't need to go all, for me, that was a process of probably 5 or 6 years where I was like focusing on little pieces of it. So like anything, it didn't seem like that overwhelming. It's not like you go from like one extreme to the other overnight by any means.
Yeah. No, I mean, the system is designed to treat diseases. It's not designed to, help people live healthier. So going to the doctor for the first time for that physical that I was required to have. It was interesting that the two questions they didn't bother to ask me were, what's your diet like? What are you eating day to day, for instance? Or, if I exercised like that, though it didn't, and it wasn't like we were just having a conversation. I mean, they were reading from a form, they were asking me the questions they were supposed to ask. And those two questions were not.
Did they ask you about your sleep?
No. That would be a third one. He did not ask me how I sleep. He did ask me about seasonal allergies. And when I responded with, I haven't had seasonal allergies in the last several years. I've eliminated synthetic fragrance from my life entirely, and I no longer get, sinus congestion. I don't need an antibiotic, and his response to that was, oh, okay. Good for you.
Not like, what are you doing? Or,
right,
how do you do that?
No, not at all. Just like, okay. And moving on, and let's talk about family history and, health history and what's, who's had cancer in your family. And, so it just isn't, it isn't designed to,
preventative.
No, exactly. It's not preventative. And and I think that would require too, it would require them to spend a little bit more time in the room with you, which again, like you said, I mean, in Canada, I mean, it's not designed for that either. We're not spending more than, 20 minutes together discussing your symptoms, and I'll, prescribe you whatever I can prescribe you that will make the system money. And then, we'll move along. So yeah.
So I'm interested. Do they prescribe you something for your perfect health?
Yeah, absolutely not. No. He had nothing. I think he was a little disappointed. I left the room before he did. I was done, and we said our goodbyes, and he was, still typing away. So, yeah,
when you looked into it, that doctors get between 2 and 4 hours of nutrition.
Yeah. So I've actually, it's interesting. I've heard it multiple times, from multiple sources, when it comes to, how much information, when it comes like nutrition and even environmental toxins, like how much information are doctors given, or medical students given, because they're going to face these types of things. At least we think they are, right? So it's been multiple sources, but more recently, and I had linked it too after I had posted that statistic and after my visit, but what is it, Dr. G on Instagram. I like some of his information, and that was the link that I posted where he was saying that in his conversations with medical students that's how much they're getting. I mean, and it's less than 8 hours for environmental toxins. So, and that statistic could change too.
So let's just quickly talk about, because I think it's something that a lot of people aren't aware of, just how toxic your inside air can be. Let's say that you can open your windows every day. I certainly try and do that. And, I think everyone can understand when they've bought a shower curtain that's just PVC, like you open it and you like can't breathe, and it's disgusting. But I don't know, what are some of your recommendations for?
Yeah. So indoor air quality, right? It can be extremely toxic, and it's interesting for people to think that way because, if they're not smoking in the home, or if they're not even burning candles in their house, it kind of blows people away that how polluted their indoor air can be. But it is, it can be 5 times, more polluted inside than it is, your outdoor air, unless of course, your neighbor's burning leaves, which happens a lot here. Especially living in the Midwest, people do that a lot. But opening your windows when possible is definitely a way to, sort of mitigate that indoor air pollution that we have. And like you say, like it's the off gases from the things like your shower liner and your furniture, your couch that's, been treated with flame retardants, and, the particle board that, your desk is made out of, all that stuff off gases, and it's all inside your indoor air. So you definitely, and anybody who has like a gas stove, I used to love the idea. I wanted to grow up and have a gas stove. I just thought that was, I would have made it if I had this beautiful gas stove, but honestly, it's just a huge source of indoor air pollution. And so I like no longer want that. But yeah, there's lots of, what's the word I'm looking for? But sources, goodness. Lots of sources for indoor air pollution, for sure.
So I know there's some specific plants that are particularly better at sucking those things out of the air for you, or is it and opening the windows? Like, is there anything else besides obviously, trying to avoid these products but it's almost impossible these days unless you're like chopping down trees and making your own furniture.
Yeah. So, I mean, investing in a HEPA air filter is a really good idea. They can be extremely expensive though. So it can be really difficult for, the average family to have access to that sort of thing. But if you can, definitely a a HEPA air filter would be really helpful. Opening windows, like you say, investing in houseplants. If you can, I kill houseplants. I can't even look at them. I don't, it's a joke, or I'm not allowed to touch the houseplants because they will die, but that can certainly help. But it's honestly, it's avoidance. It really is avoiding it as much as possible. Even the small things in the house that we use that have fragrance in them, if you could just stop using them, you can significantly cut down the amount of, VOCs in your indoor air.
So give us like a very short list of the common things that people aren't thinking. Like, I know toilet paper, for one, you could buy it without fragrance. Here in Mexico, they love like really cute with heart and floral smelling toilet paper. I just have to like smell every bag before I buy it, because some people say that it has fragrance and I take it home and it stinks. Anyway, what else?
That I can think, like, I think I had an aunt or something at one point, maybe like a great aunt who had toilet paper like that. Another surprising one is garbage bags. So many people will purchase those scented garbage bags, like Febreze garbage bags, and in the attempt to like mask the smell of your own garbage, and just don't. Like, it's so heavily fragranced too. And
obviously all of those quote unquote air fresheners like Febreze, Glade, like all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really bad.
Yeah. Extremely, extremely bad.
I honestly get a headache. Like I can't do it anymore. I don't know how. I like immediately get a headache. I can detect it. Like I have like a radar for it. When I enter a room and somebody's got some sort of, or I enter an Airbnb and I can't find it. And they're like, I know it's here somewhere. They buried it. Where is it? I put it up.
Yeah. It's some crazy statistic, like 72% of homes, use air fresheners. And I certainly was. I mean, my mom always, our home always had a fragrance bomb somewhere squirting. And, when I left home, I did that too. And it's so interesting to look back now, because when you do eliminate synthetic fragrance from your life, you become very sensitive to it. And, the fragrance in Windex is triggering for me. Like, I don't use Windex, but we were combining households, and this like foamy Windex type spray got sprayed on the windows. And for hours I was beside myself because there was like no way to I just had to wait for the scent to dissipate. It was, it's terrible. So that's like unexpected places. Your cleaning supplies have fragrance in them.
Huge one,
yeah. What was always interesting for me, especially when I was starting to look at ingredients and makeup, it was shocking to me how much fragrance is in things like your foundation and your eyeshadow. Like, right. Why does that need to have a scent?
Well, and when you switch to a brand, and I mean, thankfully now there are hundreds of really cool, amazing non-toxic beauty product brands.
Yeah.
I can't go back anymore. Like I buy a Maybelline or something product, and I just like feel and smell like you're putting chemicals on your face. So there's no way around it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's kind of interesting that you say that, because I haven't gone back. Like, when I made that switch to clean beauty, it's almost like,
well, sometimes my mom or my mom mad that I said that, but like sometimes somebody will give me something in a stocking or something, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I love that color. And then all right, this will be a selective.
Right. I guess I mean, there's pros and cons to it, but there isn't someone necessarily giving me, makeup and things like that. But I will tell you that, buying clothes secondhand, or, getting them from, those, secondhand type websites and things like that. The amount of times that I've ordered clothes from like a Poshmark or something, and it's arrived, and I'm just overwhelmed with the amount of fabric softener that was on someone's, clothes that I purchased. And it takes multiple washes to even get the scent out, and not necessarily that it's completely gone either. And that's another one too, like walking outside. I don't know if this is like an issue in Mexico, but especially here, in the States, like walking outside, you can smell people's laundry, from the dryer vents. And that's just, and it, you get to a certain point where it's offensive. You're like really annoyed that you walked outside into your yard and your neighbor is polluting you with, their toxic fabric softener. Yeah, I mean, it's a the low tox lifestyle. It's not an easy one, and you do have to just allow for those instances when things are going to be out of your control, and you just have to say, "Oh well."
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about how you are working with people. And all that, and a little bit more about the snack guide that you've created and your inspiration. Okay. But first, can you we kind of perfectly circled back to the kind of the fear and like people just completely not getting involved at all because it seems so overwhelming. Where do you recommend women to kind of start focusing if you're like picking a starting point?
Yeah. I think for women especially, it's easiest, or maybe it's more intuitive to start with the personal care products, because we already like to consume those types of products. We like to buy new makeup, new skincare. It's fun, and I think sort of beginning the process there is a great gateway to making the changes elsewhere, because personal care is so personal. And when you find products that are actually effective and work, but are with, a lot of safer ingredients, and they're, free from the most, ones, the ones that are disrupting our hormones. I think when you find products that you really like, then it makes the whole process seem possible.
Gotcha. I like that. So let's just very briefly dive into like how these chemicals disrupt our hormones, so we're a little bit more aware of what you're talking about.
Okay, so a lot of traditional ingredients in personal care products that we use in our makeup, skincare, all of the things, they have ingredients that are capable of mimicking our hormones, and so they're hormone disrupting. We call them endocrine disruptors, and the worst ones are the ones that act as like xenoestrogens, so estrogen in our bodies. Think of parabens. I recently did a whole list of different types of chemicals that are estrogen mimickers, but and parabens is one that's actually caught on, and a lot of companies will actively avoid them, and they'll even put those free from labels. So they've substituted a lot of parabens, which act as preservatives. They've substituted them with phenoxyethanol, which is in itself its own sort of problematic ingredient, but it isn't, as far as we know, it's not necessarily an endocrine disruptor. At least the research hasn't proven that yet. So, but parabens are a good one to avoid. I tell my clients, especially like anything petroleum-based ingredients are ones to avoid. I don't like anything with like PEGs or PPGs in them. So those like propylene glycols, or, they're just ones to completely dismiss. It's formaldehyde releasing ingredients, all of these types of anything that ends in like a nium, the suffix would be NIUM. Typically those are formaldehyde releasing ingredients, and ones to completely avoid. And then chemical sunscreens. So chemical sunscreens, like those types of filters, are endocrine disrupting. Oxybenzone is a great example of a chemical filter that is really popular, but it should be completely avoided by women who are pregnant or trying to conceive. Avobenzone is another one. When it interacts with sunlight and chlorine water, it creates, these chemical byproducts that are even more toxic to us than the actual chemical sunscreen. So it's just important that, we understand like the ingredients that we should be avoiding, but it can feel like really overwhelming, especially when you've not ever really bothered to read an ingredient list, and then you turn it over and you see all of these, Latin names, and you're like, what does any of this mean, and how am I supposed to make sense of it? It can seem really like it is. It's like an overwhelming facet of, I'm just trying to wash my face. I don't necessarily want to know what's in it. And so it can be an annoying side effect of this whole lifestyle. I don't necessarily want to know what is in my products, or why they're so bad for me. I think that most people, the idea is that, again, if it's sold on the shelf, it can't be that bad. And it just isn't true. Yeah, it's not true, because these companies are allowed to regulate themselves. And if they say an ingredient is safe, then that is typically enough. Especially in the States, the FDA has to prove without a shadow of a doubt that an ingredient is 100% toxic, causes cancer, ultimately leads to death, in order for it to be restricted or banned. That's not the case in the EU. There, an ingredient gets to be, the ingredient has to prove that it's safe in order to be, used, not necessarily, or there's just approved. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, but it's the hormone. For me, that's what I focus on, like, because there are so many ingredients that you can, look to avoid. A lot of people like the idea of only using all natural ingredients, which doesn't necessarily mean much. But I think to people, like, all natural would be plant-based, or, nothing synthetic. And that's, for me, not all synthetic ingredients are bad. Not all of them are harmful. It's just the ones that, especially the man-made ones that are disrupting our hormones, those are the ones that we need to avoid. And working with clients and teaching them how to read an ingredient list and spot the most harmful ingredients is one aspect that I like to focus on when we do work together, because I could tell someone all day long. I could give them 5 products or 5 brands that I recommend. I could tell them to avoid, XYZ ingredient, but unless someone, understands why they need to be avoided, and actually sits down and spends just a little bit of time, really looking at an ingredient list and teaching themselves, with some help, with some guidance, how to be an autonomous shopper, how to be a conscious consumer, then it's never going to feel like you've got a handle on it, unless you take that extra step.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we've kind of, I feel like, done a really nice overview of all the things that you touch on potentially with clients. Can you speak just very briefly to, like, since you've personally, shifted all these things in your own life, how have you felt differently, other than, like, you avoided going to the doctor? Have you noticed, like, in your quality of life or in your health, your wellness, anything there that of note since you are low tox?
Yeah. So since, really investing in this lifestyle and doing it for the last several years, the biggest thing for me that I noticed initially was the sinus congestion that I had always suffered from. Sinus congestion, and I would get bronchitis most years. Those types of symptoms and situations, like they just were a non-issue. I used to think I had seasonal allergies. I was always looking at like, what was the pollen index? And now, I mean, I couldn't care less because it really doesn't have much of an impact on me at all. But then just an overall, for me, I wasn't necessarily someone who had acute reactions to ingredients. I didn't notice if a product was, toxic or not. It really didn't seem to have much of an impact on me, or at least I didn't think that it did. So for me, like eliminating all of the ingredients that I teach people to avoid, I'm avoiding like the long-term negative chronic effects of using these types of products, because I don't have like this testimony of someone who was suffering an autoimmune disorder or infertility, or was chronically ill, and then, switched to this lifestyle and was able to reverse all of that. And there are people who have those stories. But for me, it was all about the prevention of chronic illnesses and the prevention of, raising a little girl in a really toxic world. And, for me, it's like, and granted, she's, not quite 3 years old yet, but she, I've done something right because she doesn't go to the doctor. I don't have her in and out of the pediatrician's office. We're not battling eczema. We're not battling asthma. Granted, again, she's only 3, but like, I'm not entirely worried that we're going to be, dealing with ADHD symptoms, things like that. So I did this. I did it for me. I really did it for her. And so I
get it. I got it. I love it. All right. So tell us how people can connect with you. I really powerful, informative videos on TikTok. You're also on Instagram. Where should people find you?
Yeah. So Instagram, I love Instagram. Like Instagram's like my office, and TikTok is like where I take my lunch breaks. Like it really feels like that, because it's more casual, and I enjoy making content over on TikTok. I like the short form video that I can edit and really quick. And I am doing well over there, as far as, followership. But Instagram, I would say that's where you're going to get a lot of the statistics and facts and, things that you can, save and look to, graphics, I guess. But yeah, TikTok, if you like short form video, then definitely head over to TikTok. And then I have a website as well. So, it's just Amanda Lee Bodine. It's my name, amandaleebodine.com. And, there's
website.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And if somebody's interested in signing up for your snack guide, we'll share that link as well.
That's in the
brief snack guide. It's focuses on 3 major stores that are in Canada and the US. What else can we say?
Yes. I created the snack guide for moms, especially who are wanting to give, that nutritious convenience, not have to make things in the kitchen, not be slaving away, homemaking, all of that sort of thing. But yeah, Walmart, Target, and Whole Foods are the 3 main grocery stores, but a lot of the products can be found at like any local supermarket, if whatever it is, Kroger, Ralph's, Vons, Publix, whatever it is for you. But yeah, it's
like a handy little shopping list, essentially.
It is a handy, it's all, it's divided up into, sections, so you can find crackers and popsicles, and then we've had this conversation on the dupes, the low-tox dupes.
I'm like, what are dupes? That's got to be an American thing.
So if you're looking for an Oreo cookie that is better for you, I have a dupe. And so, yeah, there's.
All right. Well, on the dupes note, I guess. And we'll share those links in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for your time and your wisdom and sharing all of these tidbits with us. If anyone's interested in being Amanda's low-tox BFF, or I guess it'd be the other way around, she can basically kind of whip you into shape and really make it not overwhelming from the get-go. If you're interested in becoming less toxic in your beauty routine, in your home, in your kitchen, in your cleaning, all the things. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Megan.
We'll be in touch.
Absolutely.